There was a time when every corner of France was buzzing about a kid, a teenager who was fast, fearless, and ice cold on the ball. Many believed he would become the next Thierry Henry or even win the Ballon d'Or, and that boy was Anthony Martial. Yet today, at just 30 years old, while other players from his generation are entering their peak years, Martial is fighting to stay relevant in a league most football fans don't even watch. Martial's problem was never about hype, it was about everything that came after it. At 12 years old, Anthony Martial wasn't just promising, he was terrifying. He grew up in an academy that created Thierry Henry and Patrice Evra, and from the moment he stepped onto the pitch, everyone could see the resemblance. The speed, the swagger, the cold, ruthless efficiency. Even Evra recognized it early. He was so impressed by young Martial that he literally gave him one of his own boots to play in, because he thought the kid deserved better than what he could afford. And the crazy part, Evra was right. By 14, Lyon scouts spotted him. He joined their academy in 2009. In his second season with the under-17s, he absolutely dominated. 32 goals in 21 games. Those numbers earned him a call-up to the France national under-17 team for the 2012 European Under-17 Championship. And he didn't just show up, he thrived. He looked like a grown man trapped in youth football. That fearlessness followed him into professional football. At 17, he made his Lyon debut in the Europa League. Just 10 minutes, but enough to show he belonged. Just like you watching this video and knowing that you belong here. So quickly, hit that like and subscribe button, and turn on notifications if you haven't already. Nobody expected Lyon to keep him long. They couldn't hide a gem like that. When Monaco came calling in 2013, paying €5 million for a teenager with just 2 senior appearances seemed crazy at the time. But Monaco weren't buying who he was, they were buying who he would become. Monaco didn't hide him either. They threw him into games with Falcao, James Rodriguez, and João Moutinho, and said figure it out. Martial did exactly that. On his first start, he scored. A cold finish against Rennes like he'd been doing it for years. In his second season, he exploded with 9 Ligue 1 goals. But it wasn't about the goals with Martial, it was how he played. He had the movement of Henry, the running power, the composure of an assassin, but even silkier feet for dribbling. Put simply, he was an even better package than Thierry Henry was at his age. He scored in the 90th minute at the Parc des Princes. He scored braces in pressure games. And when Monaco needed someone to drag them through the Champions League qualifiers, they didn't look at their £50 million stars. They looked at the teenager. By 2015, everyone in France accepted the truth. This wasn't a talent that needed patience, this was a talent that needed a stage. And Manchester United, desperate for a hero after the Sir Alex Ferguson era, gave him the biggest stage in football. What they didn't know is that the explosion of Martial would come with consequences. At 19 years old, Anthony Martial became the most expensive teenager in football history. United paid £36 million, smashing the record United set for Luke Shaw, and even outbidding the fee PSG paid for Marquinhos. But it gets better. His contract included 3 superstar bonuses, each worth £7.2 million, tied to achievements almost nobody would even dare put on paper. Scored 25 goals across 4 years, played 25 times for France, and this is the one that made people laugh. A Ballon d'Or clause where he will get paid if he won the award before 2019. The price tag was so huge that even manager Louis van Gaal called it ridiculous. But on his debut against Liverpool, he did this.
Cross comes Skirtle, he'll take a loose to it, Martial, great skill, Martial!
In an instant, they stopped talking about the fee and started talking about the future. It felt crazy to label him the next Henry, but Martial backed it up. Even Louis van Gaal was forced to acknowledge the kid's genius. In his first season, at just 19 years old, Martial scored 17 goals. He scored match winners, cup goals, moments that even made cynics believe. He wasn't loud or emotional. He celebrated like a man who had nothing to prove. Cold face, cold finish, cold aura. In December 2015, he won the prestigious Golden Boy Award, beating Bayern's Kingsley Coman and Arsenal's Hector Bellerin. He became the third Manchester United player to win it after Wayne Rooney and Anderson. No other club had more winners. He helped United win the FA Cup. Everything seemed destined for greatness. But success has a price. And Martial was about to discover it wasn't in the form of any currency, but consistency, which is where the story begins to shift. When Jose Mourinho arrived at Manchester United, Anthony Martial was 20 years old, talented, confident, and still carrying the glow of his debut season. But Mourinho didn't see a prodigy. He saw a problem in Martial that Van Gaal had once foretold.
But when you are 19 years old, you cannot expect consistency of a player of 19 years old. Mostly they shall have a lot of dips. So that I expect also from him.
Van Gaal's caution played out during Mourinho's tenure, a man who demanded intensity and obedience. Mourinho saw a player who didn't fit his football religion.
I want this gentleman Martial of the last 2 weeks of training, because if he trains the way he did in the past 2 weeks, he performs naturally the way he did today or better.
Mourinho demanded high training standards, and the micromanagement in games where he would shout at Martial derailed the youngster's confidence. So much so that it would be the most defining battle of Martial's career. Under Van Gaal, Martial started 31 Premier League matches. Under Mourinho, he started 18 in 2 seasons of being rotated often. Not because he wasn't scoring, but because Jose didn't trust him. Mourinho publicly accused him of lacking character. Privately, he fined him repeatedly. There was an infamous moment when Martial left pre-season to attend the birth of his child and came back to a fine and the threat of being sold. To Mourinho, family was an excuse. Football is war, and Martial didn't look like a soldier ready to fight his battles. But what made the criticism brutal was that Martial's decline wasn't just psychological, it was physical. He picked up recurring hamstring injuries, muscular fatigue, knocks that took away his rhythm, his explosiveness, and the sharpness required to thrive under a manager who punished softness. Every time Martial looked close to getting his place back, his body failed him, and Mourinho had no patience for fragility. In total, Martial had 23 different injuries at Manchester United over 9 years, missing 451 days in 108 games. For a player whose entire game was built on acceleration, timing, and agility, losing even 10% meant losing everything. The public saw Martial sulking, a player who didn't want to fight for the badge. But his partner, Melanie de Cruz, revealed what was happening behind closed doors. During our first 2 years in Manchester, I experienced a very difficult period because Jose Mourinho didn't play him. In these cases, Anthony shuts himself out. You know he's suffering, but he doesn't say it. He wasn't angry, he wasn't rebelling, he was shutting down, silently, internally. And because of the tension, Martial's wife avoided club events, just so she wouldn't have to look at Mourinho in the face. We were watching our man go down, not on the pitch, but also at home. As if the pressure wasn't enough, United signed Alexis Sanchez on one of the biggest wages ever offered at the club. Martial lost his place on the left wing. Marcus Rashford took his minutes. Mourinho rarely played Martial. When he did, he subbed him early. The message was clear: you're not my guy. Eventually, Martial wouldn't just lose his place at United, he would lose his place in France's biggest moment, a World Cup winning moment. He wasn't in Didier Deschamps' 23-man squad for the World Cup in Russia, and Martial watched France lift the World Cup trophy from home. The Frenchman entered the phase every prodigy fears most: irrelevance. Because once France lifted the trophy in 2018, something shifted. The conversation stopped being "when will Martial explode?" and became "will Martial ever get back to what he was?" But here's the tragedy: when injuries weren't there, when his confidence was high, when the system suited him, Martial produced. Under Solskjaer, free from Mourinho's shadow, he had his best season ever. 23 goals in 2019-2020, 17 in the Premier League, and he won Manchester United Players' Player of the Year. But those seasons became rarer, the injuries became more frequent, the confidence shorter, the spotlight dimmer. Martial's body simply couldn't keep up with the version of himself that the world remembered. He wasn't showing attitude or being lazy, it was a body that wouldn't cooperate with a career that needed acceleration. And as managers and expectations changed, Martial became less of a focal point and more of a salary stain on a club trying to rebuild. New forwards arrived, younger forwards emerged, hungrier forwards ran harder. Marcus Rashford grew, Mason Greenwood emerged, Edinson Cavani arrived, Cristiano Ronaldo returned, Rasmus Højlund signed, and somewhere along the way, Martial went from the most expensive teenager in football history to a player you didn't even bother selecting on FIFA career mode. After missing the 2018 World Cup, Martial never truly re-entered the France discussion, and rightly so. The national team that once saw him as the heir to Henry now built around another heir, Mbappe. At club level, there was no dramatic exit. Martial just faded out. From Sevilla to AEK Athens, and now to CF Monterrey. Cameos, half-fitness, substitute appearances, and now, at 30 years old, he's not fighting for golden boots or Ballon d'Ors. He's fighting for contracts, for minutes, in a league most football fans don't follow. Anthony Martial wasn't a fraud.
And Martial to Lingard.
He wasn't a miscouted talent. He was a prodigy who simply couldn't physically get to the next level.
First one by Pogba, second one by Martial.
And every day that passes in Monterrey feels less like a comeback story and more like a cautionary tale. A warning to every wonder kid who thinks talent alone is enough. Martial isn't the only wonder kid who couldn't live up to it. Check out these videos to understand their struggles too. See you there.